right, welcome back from Run Camp, buddy.
Dude, welcome back. It's February 16th, the year 2022. Welcome, everybody. This is the CrushingIron podcast, and this will serve as episode 659 and 660.
Well, yeah.
All right. Yeah, I mean, in theory, we're going with the Enduro cast today. I mean, we're coming back from Run Camp, an amazing week that we'll talk extensively about, the lessons we learned from that will apply to your daily life, not just from athletic achievements and training and fitness, but more so the mental and emotional piece that to me is the most fascinating and exciting part. But yeah, it's sometimes we split things up, but sometimes it's good to just let the juices flow and continue on. But yeah, it's good to be back. It's cold, it's dreary, it's icy here in Overland Park, Kansas, as everybody gets back from celebrating the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl victory. They had the parade downtown yesterday, which obviously meant no school. So Hayden is getting like a February spring break. But yeah, it's you got. It's Wisconsin. You got snow right now.
Yeah, we had. First of all, at that parade, was there any holding penalties?
I've never read, because I'm catching up in Training Peaks, yesterday and Tuesday, and all I'm reading are Eagles fans like total resentment comments about the holding penalty, even though the dude that held said he held him. But really? Listen, as wonderful as of a game it was, because it was such a great like back and forth game, it was like the ultimate buzzkill, because like they were going to score either a touchdown or a field goal, one of the two. And then I personally, even though I was cheering for the Chiefs, I would have loved to seen the Eagles get the ball back. It should have been a much more interesting ending, even though I think I saw it was like the third most watched Super Bowl ever, with the most giant buzzkill at the end. It was kind of lame, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah, but anyway, we do have snow, and you'll be happy to know I was already shoveling this morning.
Did you put it in Training Peaks?
I did. I put it in.
Good man.
Had to add other.
Yeah,
I didn't see snow shoveling in there, but yeah, and also there's 3 inches of snow probably already, but they're supposed to get 5 to 7, and You'll be happy to know school was canceled last night about 4:00, and I'm like, oh boy, because it's always a thing, right? Where everyone I talk to, they never cancel school, and they didn't. Like we had to have minimum a foot, like hit hard by school time, or they wouldn't cancel shit. Now they're just canceling.
Yeah. Everybody got the taste of it in 2020 and 2021. Do we really need to go to school? Nah. We'll just look. The kids are progressing fine. Let's just not do it.
Yeah, right.
We hope you are progressing fine. It feels like it's been forever. It feels like it's been over a week. We don't like spending that much time away from the cast and from you guys. But if it's your first time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have quite a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. Sounds very valuable, so we appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps and also a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, not just as human beings, but as coaches and athletes ourselves. We also talk frequently about what our own athletes are going through. Mike and I work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level triathletes looking at the very first 5K or sprint triathlon, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to the world championships, and everyone in between from all over the globe. And we use the feedback loop we have with them and Training Peaks, emails, text messages, and the like to drive the discussion of the day. We also frequently utilize our Facebook group. You can search that, Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question, and let's try it in. Awesome people, amazing community, fantastic resource. It really is filled with a insanely wide range of athletic abilities and experiences that are more than happy and willing to lend a hand and answer questions. So if you are a lurker and haven't participated yet, or have tons of questions and are afraid they might be dumb, post them. Because if you don't, you're not going to get an answer, at least a well thought out, experienced answer, not one you might find on a Google or YouTube search or in the latest Triathlete magazine article. So participate in that group. It's an awesome community, and it really is a fantastic resource. So be a part of it. We'll occasionally go in there and do a little bit of Q&A at least once a month. And that's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads, but we do have one agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yeah. Well, you said something in there. There are a lot of options out there in the podcast world. I've noticed. But, thanks to you and thanks to everybody that listens, because I know there's not a lot of them out there with 659 podcasts. And congrats to you for sticking around with me that long.
It is a lot, but it's something we're proud of, and honestly, it generally is something that I absolutely love doing.
Yeah, we like
and can't imagine
people,
not.
man.
And that was one of our we always talk about ways to support the podcast, because we don't do sponsors and that. So the two ways you can support us: one, go to our website, go in the online store and purchase some gear. That is the best way to support us, to buy a hoodie, some swim caps, or a visor, hat, anything that looks like something you might want to be a part to wear. That's a great way to support us. So go there and buy some gear. Then also you can hop on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform and give us a review. And I say that because our latest review was a solid 5-star, and they said don't stop at 1,000. And while we say that a lot, I'm sure both you and I are going to have a very hard time retiring when it comes to 1,000. So we'll leave that up to debate. And then also another great way for us to support you is through our free sprint and Olympic training plan that we have on the website as well. We're always looking for ways to support the community and grow the sport. And that's one of our big goals for this year, is to help grow the sport from the ground up, which is at that level. It's beginners. And I've been blown away. This was your baby. This is your idea. And it's just been awesome. And every time someone gets, clicks, we get an email, somebody clicks on and not buy, I guess, but, snags a free sprint or Olympic plan or both. It genuinely, even though it's like no revenue, not like it is no revenue, it makes me genuinely like very happy, because I know we're someone who either didn't want to pay or couldn't afford to pay for a plan, or is experimenting and getting in the sport, thought, you know what, let me take this. And so it's helping somebody. And so we really, really do hope that it's everyone who is getting those, it's helping you gain confidence in a sport that can be very overwhelming, and just kind of getting you into being a part of a community that's very welcoming and supportive, and it can really help, keep you in the sport, not just, achieve your goals, but also be happy and healthy along the way. So continue on, pass it along, even if you have friends and family, that don't even, or teammates that don't listen to the podcast, that don't have the patience level that you do, pass it along, because it's a great way to help. And if we want to continue to grow the sport and make it more inclusive and not exclusive, we need to help as many people as we can get in at the sprint and Olympic level.
Yeah, and it is it was something important to me, because I still remember getting into the sport, and there is a plan in there that we built that's 20 weeks from the couch to sprint. And like, I know everybody knows somebody who's struggling with, maybe changing their lives or getting back into shape or having a hard time. Maybe this is something that would be good, I mean, we start from a place that most people should be accessible to, and then, there's also a 16-week and a 12-week, but the 20-week it's a nice long period of time. I went through the Couch to 5K program and a long time ago, and, it's turned into like 9 Ironmans, in 10 years. So I don't know. It's just something that I feel really strongly about, and I put a little video clip in before each week to kind of help people guide along. And so, yeah, that's good. And then the other thing, for more experienced athletes out there, we're also opening up the club for probably through the end of the month. Basically, that's a full, like 70.3 or full plan for your whole season, and we'll just lay out your whole season. You'll tell us your races, and we'll put that all in there. And there's a lot of other stuff that comes with that, but that's on there too, the 2023 club. So that said, school's canceled, and we just got back from run camp.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, if you've listened to this podcast since day one, this is I think our 4th or 5th year doing run camps. We always talk about our camps, because we learn so much, and the last couple of podcasts we had, got good feedback how to not suck at swimming, because it's challenging, right? The swimming is very technique driven. Most people come to it late in life, and we come back from these camps, and we're there with 30 to 40 other athletes, and they're all adults, right? We've all gone through our own thing. We all carry our own baggage. We all come in with our own expectations or lack thereof, right? Based on where we are, where we thought we were, or self-belief. And I never leave camp not both energized, but also fascinated. And I am truly, like, as much time as as, coaches spend on studying, research and the newest scientific papers and physiologic, how the body works and human performance. One of the most underrated and I think understudied pieces for coaches, whether it's through experience like we have at camps or through life experiences and just talking and being open with athletes, is unlocking people's ability to see past who they think they are. And again, we talk a lot about, we've always said, stress is stress. And, talking to so many athletes during camp, you're running more. Most athletes are running more miles than they either have all year, or have their entire life, or they're running farther than ever on hillier, harder terrain, back to back to back to back. And it's always kind of like, and every athlete is shocked, and they're mesmerized. But in between these sessions, while physically challenging, right, and sometimes daunting or intimidating, is these hours that are filled with absolutely no stress. Right? You're sitting at tables, you're talking with people, you're having coffee, and I think it should be noted that, people probably see these camps and you probably think that, in our downtime, all you do is talk about triathlon, right? What races are you doing? What's your training like? What's your favorite gear? It's not, those conversations probably come up here and there, but it's really about just connecting with people, having a cup of coffee, sharing a meal, laughing together, smiling. You're not worrying about your kids or your spouse or work. You can generally detach from the underlying stress, that causes inflammation and cortisol levels to rise and inhibited recovery. You let them all go. And it's just, it shows me as a coach, right, how difficult it is for the average age grouper to balance and the impact that everyday life stress has, right? And how much it does impact your ability to do volume and intensity. And then also how many age groupers probably overtrain themselves, not because they're doing too much volume, but because they're under recovering, not because their lack of trying to sleep, but just because how much that underlying stress level is that we kind of just, become accustomed to, become accustomed to the grind. And the other piece is how we are all wired and shaped to believe something about ourselves, and how when we get away from that, when we focus on who we are around, we focus on other people, we are supportive of other people, right? We don't get in our heads for long periods of time. This is myself included. How we are able to not just meet and barely exceed our expectations, but to absolutely blow them out of the water. It is insanely fascinating to me, again, not just from a physiological standpoint, but how our head and our heart drive our athletic ability, and how we oftentimes put the brakes on it, right? Put it in the mechanic shop, put it on the shelf, park it in the garage, because of where our head is, not because of where our ability is, not because where you can go, right, as an athlete, but because of how you were raised as a kid, right? Your interactions with your parents, your interactions with coaches, how, as you've grown, everyone has, you can use, there were traumas thrown around a lot, and it's usually has like a really, really terrible definition with it, but everybody goes through certain types of trauma. They're just all relative, right? And whether it's the death of a parent or a loved one or a friend or, other things that happen to you, we all carry these, and we have these conversations, at camp. You ask them with your athletes, I ask them with mine, why do you believe this about yourself? Why do you think? And then you get to it. And then when you get them away from that, it honestly feels like it's magical, right? The things people are able to do and how encouraging it is to see. And I just think there's so much to take away as far as kind of making this like a longer two caster, because I think it's just so much to dive into. And so, again, fascinating how to me, it's not, when people say the human potential is so incredible, to me, it's not because of what the body from the neck down is capable of. But for me, once we kind of figure out the key to it and figure out what we can remove and how the layers work, it's what we're capable of from the chin up that really drives that performance.
Yeah, man. When I think about camp, I think about, it's back to what you're saying about how people do things that they didn't think they could do. And I mentioned my couch to 5K in the beginning, and how every day was sort of like, I can't do that. Oh, I just did that. And then you start training for Ironman and the same kind of thing happens. And then, but in a way, like Ironman or triathlon or whatever becomes sort of the prize in your mind. And then you start, you get to a point where you start realizing, well, I can do that, but like something still maybe is not there. Something's missing. And then you go to like the run camp. For me, what it does is it reminds me of the important things and really what the goal of triathlon and our training is. And that's to, live that happier, healthier lifestyle and feel better and be more connected. And, when you get there, like you said, we do a lot of running, but there's a lot of downtime when we're just hanging with people and literally, looking people in the eye. And it's always this thing where so many people, I think, including me, have this tendency to sort of lean on I'm not going to do. I'm just not going to do it. I'm comfortable here, sitting here or whatever. But it's always that, it can be anything, just going to meet somebody for lunch or coffee or going on a date or whatever it is. And it's just that friction to get out the door, get through it. And I always call it like life transitions. And it reminds you that once you get in front of somebody, it's all good, because there's some real magical power about connecting with somebody and sort of breaking through that initial fear. And I think another big thing that comes out of run camp is a lot of people that come there for the first time and meet all these new people. They're nervous, and I forget that sometimes, but they come in and I shouldn't say I forget it because I get a little nervous when I pull up and there's like 20 people sitting in there already and kind of having fun or whatever. And I walk in and I'm like, you almost feel this incredible need to sort of like bond with everybody in 5 minutes, but you gotta, that's just an unrealistic perspective on life. And it's sort of an analogy for the race. It's almost like you have to conquer the race right when you started or something like that. You have to let things unfold. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about run camp is that we just kind of hang out and, there's really no agenda and it sort of takes you away from your daily life. And those things are necessary because we get caught in this sort of hamster wheel of like, I got to go take care of this, got to do this, got to do that. And I personally get annoyed by that because I think life is sort of creates like all these things that we have to do. And if we don't have enough things to do, we need to create more things to do. And there always has to be something to kind of like justify our awakeness or something. And so there's really, it takes a day or two for me to kind of almost settle in and be relaxed with this idea that it's okay just to feel good and have fun and be around people and enjoy it. And I think that almost gets lost sometimes in not only life, but the training and all that sort of stuff, because you get to a point when you're like, man, well, I know I can do certain things. I know I can get my shit together and go train for an Ironman, but that doesn't always, satiate me in a way anymore. So it's like, all right, what's the real agenda here? And I think it makes you, if nothing else, run camp kind of makes you run that thought process through your mind.
It's the opposite, right? Opportunity that we give ourselves on a day-to-day basis now, and how kind of life has structured itself, or how we've allowed it to structure ourselves the last 3 or 4 years. Isolation and loneliness and doing things on your own, have become the standard, right? You can do anything. You don't have to go to the office. You don't have to go to the grocery store. You don't have to go shopping. You don't do anything. You can just sit at home. You can watch, even your kids' sports on your laptop at home without going. It's like, how much can we limit our interaction with people? And then when we train, you're also alone, right? It's like so much effort right now is being put into making your inside experience feel like outside. When you just fucking go outside if you want to.
Correct.
It's like it's really fascinating in a sad way how much companies are trying to spend money to keep people inside. Like that's a good thing. And so it gets you again in and around other people, right? In a positive energy from all those people, not a negative one, right? Not a complainer, not a woe is me, not a, well, this is going to happen. Positive, right? And even if you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable, which I think we all do on a kind of in group settings, where when we're going through things unknown, we all go through this, whether it's training groups or clubs or races. When you're surrounded by positive people, great things happen because you get out of your own head. You stop thinking about you, right? We're all self-centered and selfish. Every single person who listens to the podcast, you're selfish and you're self-centered. We all are to an extent. Now, there are obviously different levels of how selfish someone is, but we all think about ourselves, right? We all think about how things impact ourselves before we think about how it's probably going to impact someone else. And then the further we get down in our head, the further we get into our fears, the further we get into our lack of self-belief, our lack of self-confidence. I can't do this. And then those things spiral. And as those things create momentum, they run away with your opportunity to show yourself what you're capable of. But when you surround yourself with people and you get out of your own head, you end up being somewhere you never thought you'd be because you stopped thinking about it. And then all of a sudden you look up and you understand and realize, how far have we gone? How long have I made? I mean, I saw this with myself specifically on our long run on Saturday. We've done a lot of running, and obviously it's a little stressful at these camps because it's a lot of people, things have to be done. You got to kind of stay organized, and make sure everybody's having a good time. In the last few years when I've done these quote unquote races we put on, it's like, I'm gonna go kind of solo, but I'm just gonna push myself and go shorter. Well, this year I was like, I'm just gonna kind of see how things flow. I think the longest run I've had this year is like maybe 6 miles. Well, Saturday when I ended up, I ran with two of our athletes on the coast to coast, one on the East Coast, one who lives on the West Coast, and we covered just over 20 miles, 3 hours and 40 minutes on hard terrain with about 4,000 feet of climbing. I didn't once regret or have fear or wonder if I was going to finish any point. But what I found myself doing as you kind of yo-yo back and forth within a group and giving high fives and encouraging people who are coming the other direction or passing you or you're passing or you're seeing, different aspects of the course was I found myself in two places and then I found myself never in one place. First place I found myself on the first 2 laps was racing within myself, but also trying to keep up with the guys ahead of me because we had some studs. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to keep them within my eyesight. I wasn't in my own head, right? I wasn't, you can't do this. It was just like, just do what you can and be smart, but keep them within arm's length, right? Come back with them. And then as my legs kind of got underneath me after around 13, 14 miles, I actually started to feel better than the 2 guys I was running with. And so then my goal was to push the pace a little bit, not to go alone, but to pull the group and to encourage the group. Because the 3 of us, as we kind of like went out for a third loop and we decided to do it, we kind of had this, no man left behind mentality, which was, try to push the group by encouraging people with your actions. Not so much with words, because at that point we're all like, I can't breathe and I can't talk anyway. But it was more, how can I encourage this person through my actions? Because we're all going through pain, right? We're all going through discomfort. But it was, all right, I was kind of the last guy standing after loops 1 and 2, but now I'm, the one pushing the pace in this group. And it wasn't to break their spirit. It was to actually raise it and then to wait and to encourage, we can do this. We, not me, but we. And I think, and again, it was the best experience I've ever had at a run camp. And it wasn't because I shattered some time. I did go as far as I've ever gone, but it was because I didn't go alone. It was because I went with a group and I got out of my own head. And yes, it was uncomfortable. And yes, it was, 3 times the mileage that, I'm accustomed to, but it was incredibly rewarding because you felt like you were doing something not just for yourself, but for other people. And I think that's something that we get so lost in and so wrapped up in our own brain with is ourselves and our agenda and our expectations and how quickly we are to fall short, right? Because our expectations are so high or we're not in shape or we don't think we can. So therefore we just don't. We don't sign up. We don't push ourselves because who wants to do that alone, right? On your bike inside, on your run on the treadmill, in the pool by yourself. Who wants to risk those things when no one's watching, when no one's supporting? Your family doesn't really care, your spouse doesn't care, your friends don't even know what you're doing with your spandex and your goggles and your weird helmet. They just kind of support you because they're your friends. There's no one. And so you don't take risks. You don't push yourself. You don't challenge. And when you do, you decide that you have to put a time with it. right? You have to put a speed with it, because that's how you create a standard of measurement, speed. So you don't want to do that because you don't want to fail, right? Because if you fail, you're kind of just going to contribute to the thought pattern you already have created as you're not fast, you're not good enough. What am I doing here? But when you remove all that and you do things with people and you look to challenge yourself, not just your athletic ability, but yourself, the person that you are, where you are mentally and emotionally. Because again, that's our biggest inhibitor for athletic ability is our head. 100%. You can always do more than you're telling your body you can do, right? And when you remove that filter and you get other people involved and they're encouraging you, come on, man, you got this, or we can do another loop, or keep it up. It matters. And we've done everything we can the last 3 or 4 years to remove that interaction, to give thumbs up like that fucking means anything. Oh, look, I got a thumbs up on my run today. That kept me going. No, it didn't. But that's how we interact now. And there's a direct response in just that people get, like a small dopamine hit. It's a proven fact. I read a research paper on it last year, just from telling someone good job, and almost immediately when they're done doing something, or during the fact, like not writing it or a thumbs up, but actually like, man, great work, or you're doing awesome. And when you get and you surround yourself with those people in those environments, you travel farther, you go faster, you act stronger, because you're not so wrapped up in your own belief system. Because then honestly, what happens is you get swallowed up in the mentality and the strength of the group, right? From 1 lap to 4 laps, right? And it's collective positivity that drives you forward, because you don't have these negative thoughts. And if you do, they're quickly swallowed up, because you might be having a negative thought, and the next thing you're doing is you're supporting someone else. That's why these intact training squads are so impactful. Or when we're at pro athletes or ITU squads that train together day to day, but also go on training camps together, they see these huge impacts on performance in these training camps. It's not because they're doing something magical and they're quadrupling their mileage. It's because you're doing 2 very important things in life. You're removing outside stressors, and you're replacing that with a total 180, right? You're removing life stress, and you're inserting total supportive positivity. It's not just a 1-to-1. It's like a 1-to-10. And that's why you see so many people that go to these training camps and these squads that train together. It's pushing each other through positivity, not from, I guess, even like positive peer pressure, right? You have that, and it's not this, I'm going to beat you on the track today. It's, my 8 is my 8 and your 4 is your 4, but to us are the same, because we're both pushing ourselves from a 2 to a 4 or a 6 to an 8. And it's that collective power that allows you to do things. And when you take a step back and I think you peel back those layers, and it's not just a 1-day thing or a 2 or 3 day thing, but it happened over days. It gives you and again, it's not like you can go back home and quit your job, right? And remove all this stress and go on vacation the rest of your life. But it should give you just even a small bit of insight into the way that you should put the effort you should put in and how you should shape your life. Surrounding yourself with people, not trying to do everything alone, have a support network, remove negativity, get away from people that complain. Don't be around people that drive you down, but instead find people that will lift you up, push you forward, not just through their words, but through their example. Those are all things we can do. But yet we don't. Like, you said earlier in the podcast, like how much we invite stress into our life. I think I said that to someone verbatim last week. I said, I know you want to keep complaining about the stress in your life, but on many of these occasions, you open the door and welcome it. Because we do that, right? Then we find ourselves overwhelmed, and we find ourselves stressed, and we don't know why we're running slower. We don't know why, we can't lose weight, or we don't know why our power isn't going up. Look at the most obvious, right? Take away the training. Look at your thought process. Look at the things you've surrounded yourself with or not surround yourself with. And then ask yourself, am I creating a recipe for success? Not just in training, but in life, or am I creating a recipe for disaster or to take steps back? And those are direct things we have the choices to make every single day if we choose to.
Yeah, this concept of trainers versus racers. I forgot how we phrase that, but gamers maybe. I heard my buddy
trainers versus gamers.
Yeah, my buddy was telling me a story yesterday about my dad, like how they used to golf. Out at they go to the golf course, and he was always the guy that would organize the matches or tournaments, or they weren't like big tournaments or anything like that, but they were in club tournaments and things like that, and he would always put it together. And he'd always be, there was one guy, my buddy was telling me a story. He said there was one guy that would never play with any of it. He would just always go out and play by himself. And and they had big groups, and they'd always play cards together afterwards and hang out, and they'd have a lot of fun, the whole thing. And a lot of great golfers or whatever. But this guy he was a pretty good golfer evidently, but that sometimes he said one time they were sitting in the clubhouse, everybody's sitting around a table playing cards and everything, and he walked in by himself, just got done, and then somebody said, "You just play?" And he goes, yeah, I just finished up. And they're like, "Why don't you play with it?" He goes, "Well, I just play." And they said, "What'd you shoot?" And he said, 72. And my buddy said, my dad said, "Anybody can shoot 72 by themselves." And I just thought it was like a really interesting thing to think about, because it's sort of like, you kind of create your own bar, and you take your own time and you do your own thing. But then when the people are around, and it's like I was talking about with the transitions, about getting in groups and really feeling the energy of all that, and then being able to keep your heart rate down and your control and your focus and everything with all these things going on, it is a different story, and it is all in your head, man. And I had a different experience on that long run than you did, because we had two start times. The earlier time was 6:30, and that was for the people going for 3 loops or more. And I just decided I was just doing 2. So I came down about 7, and I was, drinking coffee and shit, and everybody was already loosening up. Like the whole camp was almost ready to start. I think I was one of like maybe 7 or 8 people that were going to start later. And I just kind of got out there by myself, and I'm okay with that too, because even though I was by myself, there's obviously people out there, friends, and we were all running the same course and seeing each other. And that, to me, that was like a really good experiment in, because you got to love yourself first, right? And this is something that we have to build up in ourselves too, and understand who we are, what we want, and really try to do the things that are right for us. And so I took this whole thing with I was in the similar boat. I'd been running pretty well beforehand, but not a ton. And it was going to be a big, long day for me. And I just was really so excited about this idea of finding those ups and downs, and then trying to get stronger at the end. And it's like you said, man, it's like I think you said after lap 2, you kind of were starting to feel like alive, even though that was maybe like twice as far as you'd already ran this year or whatever, in quite a while. Mm-hmm. And that's where I'm at always with my athletes. It's like, and you said, don't listen to your head. And I've actually taped a piece of tape on the bridge at Chattanooga at the halfway point of the Ironman marathon that says, "Don't listen to your head right now." And it was halfway of the 13 miles into the marathon. And because we just have so much more, I just, I'm so into that with my athletes, and they're always, a lot of people question themselves and their ability to do it. Did I do the right amount of training? Did I do this? I mean, you just said it. You just ran 6 miles, was your long run in a long time, and you just ran 20. So I'm like, okay, when you see that kind of thing, what's going on here? Are we racing free? And it sounds like you were. It sounds like you're in a great mental space, and you're letting your body do what it can do. And you're right. 99% of the time, I feel like racing comes down to your mind. I mean, you've trained to certain levels. Are you going to be able to hit that or excel from that? Or are you just going to start questioning yourself every day? I'm not good. I'm not training good. I can't do this, whatever the case may be. And I'm always really trying to like look for things to remind athletes that they have a lot more in them than they think they do. And, we talk about building training plans and things like this, and there's just nothing's like gospel. It's not perfect. We try to do the best we can, and so much of it comes back to being relaxed and being confident and breathing. And that's the other thing. I was out there just like that whole day, all I could think about was my breathing. And it was really this weird meditation. And I see people and we talk for a little while, and then you get back into your groove. It's like training on hills, right? You know, I've been talking to athletes a lot about this a week, as far as, because it just reminds you when, you know, a lot of those hills weren't very runnable, obviously, but there's a lot of them that you could probably get up. And this idea of getting up and over the hill, whether it's on a bike or a run, and then just kind of recovering as you get up, get over it, and then recover on the fly. And those are interesting concepts to me, because it's like you said, man, you go through so many different things while you're out there. You know, it could be mile 3 and you're like, no way can I make this. And then all of a sudden 2 miles later, you're feeling good. And who can explain that shit, you know? But it's about having an open mind and trusting and believing in yourself and knowing that your body is really capable of a lot more than you think it is. And how do you get that mindset going on a constant? And to me, it's like so much of it is about breathing and just taking things in flow and not getting too stressed about it and giving up. And but so many people go out there, I mean, maybe hundreds by now, that said they did shit they've never done or didn't think they could do. And how do you explain that? And I think you're right. It's all about being around people that kind of can lift you up, positive people, positive attitudes. And it's sort of like, you know, I used to go, inspiration, where do you find inspiration? I used to be a hack-ass drummer back in the day, and I'd go out and watch bands, and every single time I'd get inspired either by somebody who was great or somebody that sucked. And I'd be like, okay, I can do this. They're out here doing it. And really, that's the only way to get, you know, that's what I say is like playing racing or playing in tournaments and golf or whatever it is, or the best way to get better is to play with better people and to be around people and to be on stage and learn how to control your emotions and your breathing out there when it counts. That's how I had to play live, and it was the frightening thing I've ever done besides speaking live. But like getting up on stage with a bunch of guys that know how to play, and I'm just hacking along on the drums. That was it took years off my life, it felt like in the time, but it was the only way to get better. Is you got to go through it. You got to go through it to get better. And I think we face that all the time in this sport.
It's one of those things where you can learn so much about yourself when you aren't focused on yourself. You know, like you go things, you do things alone, and yeah, you can learn about things and about how your body's working and your decision making, of course, right? But we always have that self-governor on that protects us from failing or going too fast or you know, or not finishing. We always have that, right? So you can learn things, but when you take yourself out of it and you go beyond that and you've already kind of committed, there's really no other place to go than to transcend what you thought you could do. And some of the athletes we were running with, you know, we're kind of like joking. We're starting like lap 3. We'd already done close to 14 miles. And they're like, yeah, like you always say, you only got to do it once. And I'm thinking, yeah, the only time I'm going to run this for this whole year, I'm only doing it one time. But it's true, right? It's like you only have to do it one time. But there's also freedom in that, in knowing you only have to do it once. And then, you know, we see so many athletes, you know, that we start working with, you know, they think they got to do their 17th century rides and 3-hour brick runs and 25 milers get off the marathon, and they wonder why they got no juice for race day, right? There's nothing to transcend because you've beaten yourself from the ground, right? But you give yourself experiences and opportunities, and you see those moments. Like that was the joke on with Justin and Brian, who I was running with. We took off for lap 3 and Snell was like, nicknamed the Hammer, was pushing the pace around the pond. I mean, I was breathing like I was in zone 5. My legs were tired. It's flat, the only kind of flat part of the course. I was like, dude, slow down. He was like, all right. So we go around, we do the back half and run around, and all of a sudden, coming out of the runway, I was like, man, legs kind of picked up. So I ended up running up the whole gravel hill. The only time I've ever done that at this run. And he was like, what? He catches up to me because he didn't want to run it. But you know what he did? He ran it.
He ran it.
The whole time he ran the whole thing. He's like, well, you were doing it, so I was doing it. He was like, and he caught up to me. He goes, what are you doing? And I was like, sorry, man, I just had a moment. But it was one of those moments where I was like, I just had a moment. And for whatever reason, my body was like, all right, well, you haven't felt very good the last 2 hours, but you know what? You feel good right now. And I just went with it. And I didn't like crush myself or anything, but it's so interesting about the human body and how we so easily write it off after 10 minutes. I mean, my first loop, I think it was my slowest loop. I felt terrible. My legs were like rocks. I was like, this is going to be the longest day. And instead of just go ahead and deciding that I was only going to do 1 loop or 2 loops, I just decided to just kind of like play the long game, play the game, see, and just listen to my body in like a 10 to 20 minute increment versus forcing it or just giving up on it. And we do that so often. We give up so early on our body or we put too much stock in our body in too short a period of time, right? The first 20 minutes, oh man, I feel amazing. Or first, 5 minutes, I feel amazing today. I'm going to push it, right? And then 15 minutes later, you don't feel great, but you already made the decision to push it, so now you're screwed. Or, after 5 minutes, your legs feel like trash. You're like, oh, this is going to be a terrible day. Then after 30 minutes, your legs open up and you're like, oh, okay, I feel pretty good. So it's always interesting to go through, experiments and experiences like that to understand how different your body can react over a 4-hour stretch. We had a guy do 28 miles and he said his last 2 miles felt 5 times better than the first two laps. So he did 14, they felt like crap. He's, I'm going to keep going. Started to feel better third lap and did a 4.28 miles, which is insane, right? But he felt better towards the end. It's like, what's wrong with us? But nothing. It's just when you allow the opportunity to listen, things that are good can happen. And again, like that's the point, right? Is to challenge ourselves, not just physically, but to challenge what we believe about ourselves. And that starts in the head, and it starts in the heart, what we believe to be true, what we believe we can do, what we believe we can't do. Do I want to do it around people? Am I better doing things alone? No, you're not. You're not. And it does, it provides, when everybody got done and finished, no one asked, hey, how, I want to go faster. I want to go faster. All the questions were, what can we do to yeah, you can say make it harder, but what can we do to challenge ourselves differently? What can we do to up the game? Not to up our game and to do something irresponsible, but to up our game because there's a reward in doing things beyond your previous thought process about what you can and can't do. Because that's where you learn things. That's where you gain confidence. If you always do what you thought you could do, you're never going to reach your potential. And most oftentimes you're going to regress because you're going to all you're doing is throwing gasoline on the fire of self-doubt. You're not trying to move away from it and replace experiences. Right? And I think that is a crucial piece that is so oftentimes not investigated with athletes, is replacing bad experiences with good experiences. Now, I was talking with an athlete via email the other day, and they said, I'm really interested in run camp, but November is a really, really hard time. The year for me, I've had a lot of, difficult things happen at that time. And I just, I'm afraid it's not going to, it's going to impact things. And I said, listen, I used to feel the same way. I've talked about on this podcast before. November to me, mid to late October, November to me used to be my most dreaded time of year. As soon as the leaves would start to fall off the trees, I would get this kind of low-lying kind of anxiety. And it was because that was the time of year where I was at my rock bottom. Before I got sober, I went to treatment November 20th, 9-10 years ago. And that period of season for me always gave me anxiety. It just made me feel, it just reminded me, it was a visual reminder of how terrible things were. And one of the things that I love most about our that we have a camp in November and all these things is like I've been able to replace these bad memories with good memories. And now all I feel is positive. And this is what I was trying to explain to this athlete is like, well, I said, what better month to choose to start creating positive memories and experiences to help drown out and replace all the negative ones. And I say that to also tell you that when you've had a bad race or you've had a bad workout, people tend to run. I don't want to do that again. It's a bad experience. I don't want to do that workout again. I can't do it. And all you're doing is, again, throwing like, you're starting a wildfire that can't be put out of negativity, of self-doubt, of criticism, of, just a total beat down of your own confidence. But when you step away from that and you choose to instead make positive steps to replace those, right? And you can't ever forget bad feelings. You can't ever forget, trauma or bad experiences in races, but they're not meant to do that. They're meant to teach you about how to do things differently next time. And what can be done in the future if you don't continue to live in things that happened before, or to live in a mindset that prevents you from then seeing your full potential, right? And we get caught in that so oftentimes, not just in training, right? And living in a place where we tell ourselves we shouldn't. I'm scared, I'm fearful. That's where you grow. You don't grow behind your desk looking at, scrolling through things you wish you could do, but won't convince yourself that you're capable of. You don't grow there. All you do is stay in fear. But if you want to move away from that, you've got to get yourself in a surrounding, you got to get yourself into a race or an environment or a circumstance where failure is not an option, period. Not in that you won't have a hard time, not in that it won't be difficult, not in that you might not have a bad run or a bad ride or a bad swim, but that the positive outcome that's waiting for you will all but wash away every bit of self-doubt you had. And even if there's a bad experience, right, in life or in training or in racing, that the next one has an opportunity to be incredible, to wash it out, right? You and I have this conversation all the time, on air and off air. And before we even started this podcast, when I look back at the years I had leading up to getting sober, they were terrible, horrible. And, you're like, I'd go back and relive, I wouldn't relive them, but I don't regret them because they taught me all the things I needed to be taught in a little bit harder of a way than I might have appreciated. But it was lessons I needed to learn in a specific way. And now I use this going forward to have a more positive experience. You don't want to replace them. You don't necessarily even want to forget them, but you don't want to live there. And we do that every day with so many things. We get a small thing happens and we live there and let it ruin our day. We have a bad workout and it creates self-doubt, and we don't want to do it again, or we want to take a few days off because our head's not straight. Our head's not straight. We have a bad race or we DNF and I don't want to do it again because I don't want to set myself up for failure. Instead of seeing it as an opportunity to set yourself up for failure, see it as an opportunity to create your own success. Because even doing it and falling short again and again and again will teach you more about yourself than sitting on your ass on the sidelines, afraid to get back in the game. And more athletes and more people continue to find themselves on the sidelines, watching, waiting, and then resenting the people who have put their foot forward and decided, I'm not done yet. And yeah, this sucked, but I'm getting back in the game. This didn't feel good, but I'm going to do it again. Because we're learning things about ourselves. We all go through, our peaks and our valleys and the roller coaster of life, and especially the roller coaster in training, right? Great years, bad years, injury, health, all these things. But the point is to get your ass back up and get back in and learn things. But it's almost impossible. Almost impossible. I'm sure some people can do it, but it's almost impossible to do it alone. Without somebody to walk over and pick your ass up off the ground, nudge yourself forward, right? Get you at least past the point of where your mind isn't putting the brakes on everything. It's hard to do it alone, right? That's what people are part of teams or go to camps or have coaches, because you're never doing it alone. It's just really, really hard to go through life, training, racing alone, right? You got to have someone to lean on, and whoever that may be, you need that person to lean on, because I think there's that quote. It's like, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And that's the piece of it that I think gets us, because if you can go far and do it, like, with training, if you can do it for a long time, you might be able to go solo and do it for a year and go fast, but then you're eventually probably going to get burnt out. And you can look to your left, you can look to your right, and you look behind you and you got nobody and you're done. Or you can go together. And you can surround yourself with positive people and encouraging people, or people that are going to call you out when, you're bullshitting things, and encourage you in a positive way and tell it to you straight. You might not get there the first year, but you might get there in year 2 and year 3. And then guess what? Go beyond that in year 3 and year 4. And it's an incredible lesson, I think, and one that, while camps are exhausting, in a lot of ways, it's kind of that reminder, at least I know I need specifically, on what we're all capable of, and how much more fun things are to do with other people than to just try to go through life isolated and alone.
Well, first of all, that the worst years of your life were before treatment. That was when we met, man. So couldn't have been all that bad. We had some good times.
I mean, we had some great times. But you saw me. Listen, you don't need to sugarcoat it. You saw me back then.
But whatever. Okay.
But listen, doesn't it make what we're doing now that much more incredible?
Yeah, I mean,
it wasn't like you were in a bright and shiny place either, back then. But it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, I want to just say something like about there's a story that I told a long time ago about trunk cookies, and it's kind of lasted through the years. How I would go get this super craving for like cookies, and I'd go to the store and I'd eat like 6 of them or 8 of them on the way home driving, and then my partner in the passenger seat, and I just kind of nibble, and then before I'd take my groceries up, I would leave them in the trunk so they wouldn't be accessible. And now Emily always bakes 2 big things and puts a sticker on the top that says trunk cookies and brings them to camp. And it's just because it's like, I joke about that, but it's like a weird thing. I think most of us go through this sort of like escape to the cupboard and just like mow down, like there's something really missing in your life at that moment, or you're low blood sugar, and just but it feels kind of like a guilty moment, right? When you're doing that, when you're sneaking around and doing stuff. And but then you put those trunk cookies on the counter, and I just eat these things right in front of everybody, or someone else does too. And I just think that there's some weird psychological thing about being with people, and it's kind of like, we just ran 14 miles or whatever. It's okay to have a few cookies, right? Don't feel guilty about it, right? I mean, we were talking about before the podcast that I said life is hard, and you're like, no, life is easy. And in a lot of ways, you're so right, because a lot of things have been made easier for us. I mean, people deliver food, your dinner. You can go online and find out any information. Everything's available. It's easy to just kind of isolate on your phone or whatever like that. But when I say life is hard, I mean that is why it's hard, is because things are so easy. And it's for food, for example. It's like people always ask me, hey, how should I, structure my diet? And I'm like, you're looking at the wrong guy, man, because I can't figure this shit out. I mean, because there's so many options now, and stuff is so easy to grab crap, and they're putting it right in your face. And that's why I get mad sometimes about the phone part, like just being on the phone a lot. And my mom will be like, you're on the phone? I go, I know, but I hate it. And it's just because it's so tailored to my addictive nature or whatever. And it's just like this tough thing. So like, and with food is like, they're putting so much crap in food and everything like this, it's like it's very difficult, I think, to have quote unquote what a healthy diet is. And then there's a zillion different opinions on what that even is anyway. So when we go a weekend at camp, it's sort of like, it helps you focus on yourself and how, I think it's important to really understand what works for you, and be okay with that. And a lot of times we'll go down these roads and feel guilty and not really know what's going on. But like, it's so weird, we can just go out there and mow down, and everybody's kind of in a good spot and feels good and feels healthy and happy, and we're active. And, just like that, it's the active piece. It's like, how do you like whenever I'm trying to change something, it's so difficult to dramatically change anything, because it's like, I love what you're saying about the replacement. And because I think I went through that with my dad, because he went through AA many years ago. And it was sort of like, you kind of substitute good shit for bad shit, and then hope that stuff kind of, at least the lure of it fades away over time. And I think that's the secret to everything, really, is just kind of don't expect yourself to be like completely different tomorrow. Just kind of like add a little bit more, positive juice in today. Or if you're trying to change yourself or become more confident or stronger, you can't get down on yourself for not making that happen instantly. You have to sort of be patient. Like that's the way that, good things seem to happen with me. And it's just not easy, because you're always tempted. I feel like temptation is just everywhere, and then someone will come out with their idea of whatever works or whatever like that. And like a lot of times I can just speak for myself, but that doesn't necessarily make it right for you. I think you have to, it's sort of like being supportive as a coach, and also like giving you the reins and understanding what's going on. And I'll try to point out things that I remember, like that helped me along the way, and I think that you can benefit from or whatever. But it's just sort of something that we have to figure out. And I think it starts with, really believing in yourself, and like I said earlier, just loving yourself first, because what's right. Most people know what's the right move in certain situations. And it's like, just, love yourself and do things for others. And I think that, like that's kind of the microcosm of what you sort of were describing on the run you guys were on. It's sort of like how can I help? And then how can I accept being helped? It's just sort of being an open vessel both ways. That's what I got right now.
Do what now?
I said, that's what I got for you right now.
Yeah,
I know it. One more thing I want to add to that, because we're getting closer here probably. One of the things that has been important to me about Run Camp is, I started egging people on early to get in the creek and do the polar plunge after longer, hard runs and stuff like that. And I've really been kind of like, I don't know, just, I don't want to say proud, but just like, it makes me feel good to see that, more and more, like I think we did it 2 or 3 days this time, and people are just sort of doing it on their own and things like that. And whether or not, the people believe it's good for you or not, to me, it's one of those positive moves in life that it kind of pushes. It's a hard thing to do, to walk into cold water and stand there or sit there for, like we got in there this time and people are pushing me. I mean, I always have that in my head that I want to be sort of like this guy that's like a cold plunger, but I'm not an expert by any means. But now we've got people holding me in the water longer. It's really a cool thing. And what, like I said, whether or not you think it works or not, I do believe it. But to me, it was the camaraderie and just watching people's face. I'm not going in, and then they go in and they're like, oh my God. And then just the vibe around the whole sort of ritual of getting in the water. And then some people dive in and go under, and it's just like a really nice piece of the puzzle. It's just something that, you got to walk down to the creek and then take off your, sweats and jump in the water and freeze for a little while. And then just everybody, that's part of the thing is I can't do that, but then they do it. And then, all right, you've done something else you didn't think you could do. And now that adds to the, the puzzle of confidence. And that makes little things easier, I think. So that was one thing that I noticed this time, is now we got people that are kind of trying to stretch the boundaries on the water plunge. So it just keeps kind of snowballing, man. I think that's the part of it too, is like you start to see, and a lot of people will be like, I'm going out and running a little more or whatever. And somebody's like, you know what? I think I'll do that with you. And it's like, what? Mm-hmm. After we've been running all day, and it's like, what are you doing now? I don't know. I just kind of feel like going out for a little shakeout run or something, and people join, and that's shit you're not doing by yourself, man.
You said it right then. It's it's so interesting, right, to hear the conversation in your head when it's not just you, right? When it's you telling yourself you can't, or you telling yourself you won't, or you telling yourself it doesn't sound comfortable, or I can't go that far, or that doesn't sound like fun. It's an easy decision, right? You're not having to sway anybody, right? That's not really a debate. It's just you. You're like, just no. But like you said about the cold plunge and going an extra lap, these aren't easy asks, right? Like it's not like you're trouncing down to the creek that is at the bottom of a giant hill, mind you, and getting in 60-degree water. It's like 40 degrees. It's freezing, and it's not like an extra lap is an extra 400 meters on the track. That's close to 7 miles and 1,500 feet of elevation gain. It ain't easy. But if you have a conversation on your own, you're like, nah, I'm good. I'm done. But when somebody else is involved in the conversation is positive, you always kind of get that draw, and you're like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's go. And you do it, and you have the best time versus choosing not to. And it is. I think that we can wrap it up, but it's just it's a really interesting and, again, understated piece of how people can improve, right? And how we can get out of our own way. And getting out of your own way starts with getting out of your own head. And sometimes you need that somebody to clap back at you. Get back out here and do that. What do you mean you're going inside? No, you're doing this. Not in a hard way, right? Or to belittle you, but they're not really talking to you, right? They're looking past the person they love. They're looking past the person they care about. And who they're talking to is that little voice inside your head that somehow got behind the control panel and is driving your decision-making for today. Nah, I can't do it. And what they're doing is they're ejecting them from that and replacing them with another thought, which is someone else's. And when they do that, then you start to make the decision on your own. You're like, oh, it's like you've been like someone's taken over your body. Like, oh, I can't do this. And you do it. And you're like, wait a minute. 30 minutes ago, I said I couldn't do anymore. My legs were shelled. Now I'm like running. We underestimate again, and we put so much emphasis and so many podcasts, ours included, are so focused. Ours probably less than others, but so many are so focused on the physiological aspects and training zones and intensity distribution and lactate and all these things. And you're like, none of that means shit if you can't get your mind right. And you can't get your mind right most of the time if you're doing it alone. And if you have it, then keep riding that train. But at some point, you're going to have a hiccup. You're going to hit a roadblock. You're going to run into an obstacle. And it's so hard to get through that on your own. And it's just, a great reminder, I think, for all of us, myself included, to the best way to get out of your own head is to get around other people and connect that way, and then allow that. If you could bottle up that positive energy, you could sell it for millions, because it's hard to come by now because people don't want to make the effort. And that, again, that goes back to, you don't want to make the effort, but if you want to make the effort, you can. And it's hard because we have somehow created a world where, comfort is being alone and alone and fine. And that's just kind of the status quo these days, when it shouldn't be. It should be the worst day, right? It should be, it's like, HALT is a phrase we use a lot in recovery. And it's, the HALT stands for hungry, alone, hungry, anxious, lonely, and tired. And I think about, interactions I have with so many people and athletes. I'm like, that's most people's day, right? Most people's day, maybe the hunger part, but the anxious, lonely, and tired piece, that's everyone's day. For a lot of people who just go around, being alone and not dealing with it, that's life. HALT is their life. And for a person in recovery, that's like, HALT means like stop what you're doing, go to a meeting, because you're pretty close to, relapse, or you're more susceptible for doing something you shouldn't do. That's everyone's fine now. Is that kind of base level anxiety and loneliness and being tired because they're doing too much, and they're doing too much. They're anxious, and they're overwhelmed, and they're not sleeping because they're tired, and they're doing all homework from the computer. They're lonely, and they're like, oh my God, like, what have we created? So do what you can, right? Do what you can to get out of that non-comfort zone. I'm not calling it a comfort zone anymore. Do what you can to get out of that non-comfort zone, because it's not comfortable. It's not good for you. And branch out and do something scary and push yourself and sign up for a race that intimidates you, and go to a group workout with the run club that scares the introvert half to death. Go out and live your life. Go live your life. There's a whole world out there with more opportunities than we've ever had as a human species. We have more things we can do and more access to anything than ever.
Yeah.
Yet we're inside more than ever.
I know.
Go out, expand your horizons, transcend what you believe about yourself, and listen to us again next week.
Yeah. Go kickstart it with some shoveling. That's kind of, nobody likes to shovel. I like to shovel. I love, but it's true though. It's like it's almost like grab something that you can do right now, and then it's a kickstarting thing. I think, a lot of times that just becomes someone's coffee, but where do you go after that? It's like, and it's like, for me, I don't like to go out and think about running 12 miles at 6 a.m, but I might like to get up, have a little coffee, and then do some push-ups. And then I'll be like, oh, okay, now I'm a little bit more awake and ready or whatever, or go shovel or something. A lot of times it's sort of that stepping stone of motivation that I look for a lot. I may not want to do exactly what we're going to do, but how do I get from where I'm at to that point? And a lot of times that takes a creative step.
We can always find them if we're looking.
Yeah.
As always, we love you. We appreciate you. And we missed you in the last week that we've been away doing the run camp and hanging out with athletes, and now catching up now that we're back home. Hope you appreciated the Enduro cast for today, serving as 659 and 660. And take care of yourself. You should always be your biggest fan, and that also means challenging yourself and not putting yourself behind, closed doors in a safe space. The world is meant to be explored, and so is your potential. As always, go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. And as always, if you need anything from Mike, he's available, CrushingIron@gmail.com. If you need anything from me specifically, c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, buddy.
All right, dude. See you later.
All right, see you.